Most people don't even realize they're living inside a prison, not a prison with bars, not a prison with locks, but a prison created by their own thoughts. They carry the chains of fear, doubt, guilt, and insecurity every single day, and then they wonder why life feels so heavy. Let me tell you something. You were not put on this earth to live small, to live stuck, or to live trapped. You were created for expansion, for growth, for breakthroughs. But here's the truth. Your mind can either be your greatest weapon or your deadliest enemy. And the only way forward is to free your mind. What does it mean to free your mind? It means breaking the pattern of limitations you've accepted as truth. It means refusing to let the old story run your future. It means stepping out of fear and stepping into possibility. Because the thoughts you repeat become the life you live. If you tell yourself, I can't, guess what? You won't. If you say it's impossible, your brain will work overtime to prove you right. But if you decide right now, I can, your mind starts building a new reality to match that belief. The world outside of you doesn't change until the world inside of you does. The key to freedom is not money, not status, not approval. It's mastering your own mind. Because once your mind is free, no one can stop you. Not circumstances, not setbacks, not critics, not failures. So here's the challenge. What thoughts, what beliefs, what fears have you allowed to control you? And are you willing in this moment to rip them out, to break those chains, to unleash the part of you that's been waiting to be set free? Your life changes the moment you stop being the victim of your own thoughts. Your life changes the moment you step up and say, no more lies, no more limits, no more prison. Free your mind, and the rest of your life will follow. Most people don't realize that the greatest prison they'll ever live in is not built from concrete or steel. It's built from the thoughts they allow to dominate their mind and the beliefs they've unconsciously accepted as truth. Your mind is either your prison or your power, and the moment you recognize this, you understand that life is not determined by circumstances alone, but by the meaning you attach to them and the perspective you choose to carry every single day. Think about it. Two people can face the same setback, the same rejection, the same failure. And one of them will crumble while the other will rise, not because one had better luck, but because one allowed their mind to become their power while the other let it become their prison. Your mind has unlimited potential, and most people are using it against themselves. They rehearse failure in their imagination before it even happens. They talk themselves out of opportunities before they even take the first step. They sabotage their own progress because the prison in their head is louder than the possibilities in front of them. If you've ever said to yourself, I'm not enough, I don't have what it takes, I'll never succeed, then you've experienced this prison firsthand. The human mind is like fertile soil. Whatever you plant will grow. If you plant seeds of doubt, fear, and insecurity, don't be surprised when your life produces limitation. If you plant seeds of courage, resilience, and belief, your life will reflect that too. You have to decide, are you going to be the warden of your own prison or the master of your own freedom? Every single person has thoughts that try to keep them small. That voice that whispers, play it safe, don't take the risk, stay comfortable. But comfort is just another cell with invisible walls. When you let that voice rule your life, you're trading possibility for false safety. And you know deep down that safety is an illusion. The job can disappear, the relationship can end, the world can change overnight. The only true security is knowing you've developed the strength to face whatever comes. That strength begins with your mind. When your mind is your prison, every problem feels permanent, every challenge feels impossible, and every setback feels like the end. You catastrophize the future, you replay past mistakes, and you lock yourself in a cycle of suffering. But when your mind becomes your power, problems become puzzles, challenges become training, and setbacks become the foundation of your comeback. You start to see life differently because you're no longer trapped in the cage of what if I fail? You're living in the energy of what if I win? And ask yourself right now, what is the story you've been telling yourself about who you are, about what you deserve, about what's possible for your future? Is that story empowering you, or is it chaining you? If it's chaining you, then recognize that you are the one holding the key. You are the one who can rewrite it, shift it, destroy it, and create a new one. You don't need permission from anyone else. You don't need someone to unlock the door. The moment you choose new thoughts, you are free. The mind doesn't stop producing fear and doubt just because you decide to grow, but you don't have to accept every thought as truth. Freedom comes when you realize you are not your thoughts. You are the thinker of those thoughts. You are the observer, and you get to decide which ones to keep and which ones to let go. Just because a thought shows up doesn't mean it has power over you. Power comes from the meaning you attach to it. You can look at fear and call it a wall, or you can look at fear and call it fuel. The same thought can either chain you or charge you, and that choice belongs to you. Every leader, every creator, every person who has ever transformed their life had to break out of the prison of their own mind first. They had to refuse to accept the limitations handed down by family, society, culture, or past experience. They had to look fear in the face and decide that fear would not run their life. And so do you. The reality is, if your mind remains a prison, the outside world will never feel free. You can have money, success, relationships, even achievements. But if inside you are trapped in fear, self-criticism, and doubt, you will always feel chained. But if your mind becomes your power, you can be broke and still resourceful. You can be rejected and still unstoppable. You can face failure and still come back stronger. Because true freedom has nothing to do with what's around you and everything to do with what's within you. You must condition your mind daily because freedom is not a one-time decision, it's a practice. Just as you feed your body, you must feed your mind. Just as you exercise your muscles, you must exercise your thoughts. If you don't direct your mind with intention, it will drift toward fear by default. If you don't fill it with belief, it will fill itself with doubt. If you don't choose to empower it, it will imprison you. Your responsibility is to choose every single day to turn your mind into your power. The chains are not real unless you accept them as real. The walls are not real unless you surrender to them. The prison is not locked. You've simply been sitting inside too long to realize the door was always open. Today, you decide whether you'll keep living inside that prison or whether you'll walk out into freedom. And the moment you step out, you'll see the truth clearly. Your mind has always been your greatest weapon. And when you master it, you master your life. The story you repeat becomes the life you live, and most people don't even realize they are living inside a script they didn't consciously write. From childhood, you picked up beliefs, phrases, and patterns that shaped how you see yourself in the world. Maybe someone told you that you weren't smart enough, strong enough, talented enough, and you accepted it as truth. Maybe you failed once and repeated the story that you're a failure. Maybe you were rejected and you turned it into the story that you'll always be unwanted. These stories live in your mind, and you replay them until they become your reality. But here's the truth. Those stories are not facts. They are choices. And every moment you have the power to write a new one. When you wake up in the morning and tell yourself, this is just who I am, I'll never change, you've already decided the limits of your day. When you say, people like me don't succeed, you've already closed the door on opportunity before it even arrives. When you tell yourself, well, it's too late for me, I missed my chance, you've locked yourself in a future that hasn't even happened yet. The story is powerful not because it's true, but because you give it authority. Your words are instructions to your brain, commands that shape your behavior, and the repetition of those words is what makes them real. Think about it. If you keep telling yourself you're unlucky, you'll stop noticing opportunities. If you repeat, I can't do this, you'll stop trying. If you say, I'm not confident, you'll walk into every room small, hesitant, and defeated before you even begin. But the opposite is also true. If you repeat, I am capable, your brain will search for evidence to prove it. If you declare, I will find a way, you'll start creating solutions. If you tell yourself, I'm growing every day, your actions will align with that belief. The story you choose is the foundation of the life you create. Your brain is like a computer and your words are the programming. Garbage in, garbage out. If you keep feeding it doubt, fear, and excuses, your life will reflect exactly that. But if you start feeding it courage, vision, and resilience, your life will expand in ways you can't even imagine yet. The repetition is what matters. One empowering thought might feel good in the moment, but when it becomes a mantra, when it becomes a daily practice, when you repeat it until it's etched into your identity, then it becomes unshakable truth. Look at the people who are thriving, the people who break barriers, the people who achieve what seems impossible. They don't necessarily have better circumstances, they have better stories. They repeat to themselves that they are worthy, that they are resourceful, that they can overcome. And because they repeat it, they believe it. And because they believe it, they act on it. And because they act on it, they create a life that reflects it. Meanwhile, others with the same potential stay stuck because they repeat a story of limitation, and that story becomes their cage. It's not the event that defines you, it's the interpretation. A failure can be the story of, I'm not good enough. Or the story of, I just learned something powerful. A rejection can be the story of, I'll never be loved, or the story of, I'm being redirected to something better. The exact same event can produce two completely different lives depending on the story attached to it. That's how much power you hold in your narrative. Every day you are affirming something. You're affirming your greatness or you're affirming your weakness. You're affirming your potential, or you're affirming your limits. The danger is that most people aren't even aware of the affirmations they're living by. They wake up and unconsciously tell themselves the same old lies, then wonder why life never changes. Change doesn't begin with circumstances. It begins with the language you use to describe yourself and your possibilities. You can't speak defeat and live victory. You can't speak smallness and live greatness. You can't keep telling yourself the same painful story and expect a different ending. The story must shift. Your identity must shift. The words that come out of your mouth when no one is listening are shaping the trajectory of your entire life. So pay attention to what you're saying to yourself, because you're planting seeds that will inevitably grow. Imagine if you decided today to tell yourself a new story. Imagine if you chose to repeat that you are powerful, capable, and worthy. Imagine if you declare that you're not defined by your past, you're defined by your potential. Imagine repeating that every single day until your brain no longer doubts it, until it becomes your reality. That repetition rewires your brain, reshapes your identity, and rewrites your destiny. The story you repeat becomes the filter through which you see everything. When you repeat, life is hard. You see every obstacle as confirmation. When you repeat, life is happening for me, you see every obstacle as an opportunity. When you repeat, I always mess up, you see your mistakes as proof. When you repeat, I always learn, you see your mistakes as progress. The repetition controls the lens, and the lens controls your life. So the question is, what story are you going to keep telling yourself? And is it serving the future you want to create? If it isn't, then it's time to take the pen back, to reclaim the narrative, and to start repeating the story that aligns with your vision instead of your fear. Because the story you repeat becomes the life you live, and if you want a different life, it starts with a different story. Freedom starts the moment you break patterns of fear and limitation, because every single one of us has been conditioned to live inside loops we didn't even choose. These loops are made of habits, beliefs, and emotions that keep you stuck in the same cycles year after year. You wake up with the same thoughts you had yesterday, you repeat the same routines, you respond the same way to challenges, and then you wonder why life doesn't feel different. The truth is, nothing will ever change until you disrupt the patterns that hold you hostage. Fear and limitation are not just feelings, they are patterns, automatic responses that keep you locked in mediocrity. Think about it. Fear tells you to hesitate, so you do. Limitation whispers that you're not capable, so you shrink. Fear convinces you to play safe, so you never risk, and limitation convinces you to settle, so you never grow. Over time, those patterns become so normal that you stop noticing them. They become your default. They become your identity. You start saying, I'm just not confident, or I'm not good with money, or I'm not the type of person who takes risks, as if those words describe your DNA. They don't. They describe your patterns, and patterns can be broken. The moment you break the pattern, you break the chain. The moment you stop reacting out of fear and start responding with courage, you create a new possibility. The moment you stop repeating the lie of limitation and start declaring your strength, you create a new identity. This is why some people spend decades stuck in the same place, while others seem to transform overnight. It's not luck. It's not magic. It's a willingness to disrupt the old cycle and create a new one. Fear will always try to show up. It's wired into your brain as a survival mechanism. But survival and living are two different things. Survival means playing not to lose. Living means playing to win. Survival means shrinking to fit in. Living means expanding to stand out. Survival means listening to fear. Living means using courage to rise above it. The moment you stop letting fear dictate your decisions is the moment you step into freedom, because fear may visit, but it doesn't have to control you. Limitation is no different. Most of the limits you believe in were never real to begin with. They were handed down to you by people who were also trapped in their own patterns of fear. They told you not to dream too big, not to take too many risks, not to step outside the line, and you absorbed it as reality. But those limits were never truth. They were just borrowed beliefs. And you don't have to carry them anymore. The only limits that exist are the ones you agree to keep. The moment you decide to break the agreement, you're free. Breaking the pattern doesn't mean the fear disappears forever. It means you interrupt it before it takes over. It means you notice the moment your brain says, what if I fail? And instead of freezing, you move forward anyway. It means you catch yourself saying, I can't, and you replace it with, I'll find a way. It means you stop waiting until you feel ready, because freedom is not found in waiting. It's found in action. Every time you act in the face of fear, you weaken its grip. Every time you push beyond a limitation, you prove to yourself that it was never real. Ask yourself right now, what patterns have you been living in? What cycles keep repeating in your life? Maybe you keep sabotaging your success the moment you get close to it. Maybe you keep attracting the same toxic relationships. Maybe you keep starting projects but never finishing them. These are not random events, they are patterns. And if you can recognize them, you can break them. The first step to freedom is awareness, because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Then comes the decision to keep repeating it or to break it once and for all. Breaking patterns requires courage because it feels uncomfortable. Your brain loves the familiar, even if the familiar is painful. That's why people stay in jobs they hate, in relationships that drain them, in habits that destroy them, because the pain is familiar and the familiar feels safe. But safety is not freedom. If you want freedom, you must be willing to embrace the discomfort of change. You must be willing to do what's unfamiliar, to think in new ways, to act in new ways, to step into uncertainty. That's the price of freedom, and it's worth it, because the alternative is staying trapped in a life that doesn't reflect your potential. Freedom starts the moment you break the pattern, not when everything is perfect, not when you have it all figured out, but the very moment you decide you're not going to keep repeating the same cycle. It might be messy, it might be scary, it might feel like you're walking into the unknown, but that unknown is where your life begins. The chains of fear and limitation lose their power the second you take a step they said you couldn't take. You don't need to wait for permission. You don't need someone to rescue you. You don't need every detail planned out. You need a decision, a single powerful decision that says, I will not live this way anymore. That decision becomes the crack in the wall of your prison. Every action you take after that makes the crack bigger until one day the wall falls completely and you realize the prison was never locked. It was just familiar. The life you want is on the other side of the pattern you're afraid to break. The love you want, the success you want, the confidence you want, it's all waiting outside of fear and limitation. Freedom is not about controlling everything in your environment. It's about mastering the only thing you ever had control of, your choices, your actions, your thoughts. When you choose courage over fear, when you choose possibility over limitation, when you choose to break the cycle instead of repeat it, that is when freedom begins. Your outer world won't change until your inner world does. And this is the part most people don't want to hear, because it's easier to point at circumstances, to blame other people, to complain about the economy, the government, or their past, than it is to take responsibility for the thoughts, beliefs, and emotions running inside of them. But life doesn't bend to excuses, it bends to energy. What you carry inside of you is exactly what you project into the world, and what you project is exactly what comes back to you. You can try to rearrange the outside as much as you want, get a new job, move to a new city, start a new relationship. But if the inside doesn't shift, the story repeats itself. The same doubts, the same fears, the same patterns follow you wherever you go, because the common denominator in all your experiences is you. The inner world is the soil. The outer world is the harvest. You can't plant weeds of negativity, self-doubt, and fear in your mind and expect to reap confidence, joy, and success in your life. The harvest always matches the seed. If you don't like the results you see out there, you have to examine what you're planting in here. People say they want more success, but walk around with thoughts of failure. They say they want love, but repeat stories of unworthiness. They say they want freedom, but constantly focus on fear. The contradiction between what they ask for and what they believe creates a life of frustration, because the outer cannot grow beyond the boundaries of the inner. Think about a thermostat. If a room is set to 70 degrees and the temperature drops, the thermostat kicks in and brings it back up. If it rises too high, it cools it back down. Your mind is the same way. Your inner world is the setting that determines how much success, love, and abundance you'll allow yourself to experience. You can temporarily rise above it. You can have a win, an opportunity, a breakthrough. But if your inner world is not set to handle it, you'll sabotage it until life falls back to the level of your self-image. That's why some people win the lottery and lose it all, why others achieve success and then implode, why relationships collapse even when love was present. The outer world can only expand as far as the inner world has grown. If you want a different life, you don't start by changing everything outside. You start by mastering what's inside. You train your focus, because where focus goes, energy flows. You train your beliefs, because what you believe shapes how you act, and how you act creates your results. You train your emotions, because your state determines your decisions, and your decisions determine your destiny. This is not just motivational talk. It's the reality of how human beings operate. Every external breakthrough is preceded by an internal shift. When you decide that you are worthy, your actions reflect worthiness. When you believe that you are resourceful, you start finding solutions where others see problems. When you choose to live in gratitude, you start noticing opportunities that were invisible before. On the other hand, when you carry insecurity inside, you attract relationships that mirror it. When you carry scarcity inside, you repel wealth even when it knocks on your door. When you carry fear inside, you see threats everywhere, even in places where others see possibilities. The outer is simply a reflection, a mirror of the inner, and if you want to change what you see in the mirror, you don't smash the glass, you adjust what stands in front of it. The most dangerous trap is believing that once you get the outer world right, then you'll finally feel free, happy, or confident. That's backwards. You don't get the relationship to feel worthy. You feel worthy and then attract the relationship. You don't get the success to feel powerful. You feel powerful and then create the success. You don't get the money to feel secure. You feel secure in your ability to create and then the money flows. People chase the outer as a way to fix the inner, but it never works because the inner world cannot be bypassed. Until you do the work inside, the outside remains temporary. That's why you've seen people who have everything on paper, money, status, beauty, achievement, and yet they are miserable, anxious, or empty. They changed their outer world but neglected the inner, and so they live in quiet suffering despite external appearances. And you've also seen people with little on paper but who radiate joy, gratitude, and peace. They mastered the inner world, and as a result, even if the outer isn't perfect, their life feels rich and fulfilling. That's the difference. Changing your inner world doesn't mean ignoring the outer. It means recognizing that the outer is downstream of the inner. If you want to move the river, you go upstream. If you want new fruit, you tend to the roots. If you want a stronger house, you build a stronger foundation. The work is internal, and once you align it, the external has no choice but to follow. So the real question becomes, what are you rehearsing inside every day? Are you rehearsing fear, doubt, and failure? Or are you rehearsing courage, belief, and success? What images do you play in your mind? What words do you speak to yourself? What emotions do you practice? Because your brain is listening, your body is responding, and your life is reflecting it. Repetition builds identity, and identity builds destiny. You can read all the books, attend all the seminars, buy all the programs, but if you don't shift the dialogue in your head, nothing sticks. You can work harder, grind longer, hustle more, but if the inner world says, I'm not enough, you'll always find a way to sabotage the outer. That's why transformation doesn't come from adding more to your plate. It comes from aligning what's already within you. When you change the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you see yourself, the external world bends to match it. Every great change begins inside. Revolutions begin in the mind before they begin in the streets. Inventions are born in imagination before they exist in reality. Confidence is built internally before it's recognized externally. Freedom is felt inside before it's lived outside. You hold the power to shift everything in your life by shifting the way you relate to yourself. Your outer world won't change until your inner world does. And once the inner changes, the outer has no choice but to follow. Free your mind, and nothing outside of you can hold you back because the real battle is never out there. It's always in here. People spend so much of their life trying to control circumstances, to control other people, to control outcomes. But the truth is the only thing you've ever had real control over is your own mind. The moment your mind is free, no setback can destroy you, no critic can define you, no failure can end you because the world outside of you has no power over a person who is liberated inside. That's why history is full of people who were imprisoned physically but still lived free, because no one could chain their thoughts, no one could stop their vision, no one could steal their belief. And it's also full of people who had every opportunity, every resource, every advantage, but were enslaved by fear, doubt, and insecurity, so they never lived the life they were capable of. Freedom of the mind is the highest form of power you can achieve. When your mind is free, you stop waiting for permission. You stop needing validation. You stop comparing yourself to others. You move with conviction. You speak with confidence. You act with courage. You're no longer at the mercy of opinions, circumstances, or conditions, because you've built an inner fortress that nothing external can penetrate. That's what makes some people unstoppable. Not that life never knocks them down, but that no matter how many times it does, their mind refuses to stay chained to defeat. The opposite is also true. When your mind is not free, even the smallest obstacle feels impossible. Even the smallest rejection feels crushing. Even the smallest risk feels terrifying. You live in hesitation. You second guess every decision. You sabotage every opportunity. Not because the world is against you, but because your own mind is against you. Fear, doubt, guilt, and limitation become the invisible walls that keep you trapped. You walk through life with the potential for greatness, but you never access it because your mind is locked from the inside. The freedom you're searching for is not going to be delivered by success, money, or recognition. Those things might feel good for a moment, but if your mind is still chained, they'll never last. You'll achieve and still feel empty. You'll win and still feel unworthy. You'll arrive and still feel like you're not enough. Real freedom is not what you get, it's what you release. It's letting go of the lies you've believed about yourself. It's letting go of the need for approval. It's letting go of the fear of failure. It's letting go of the idea that you have to be perfect before you take a step. Free your mind and you reclaim your power. Because once your mind is free, nothing can truly stop you. Criticism doesn't paralyze you because you know who you are. Failure doesn't end you because you see it as feedback. Fear doesn't dominate you because you've learned to act in spite of it. Circumstances don't define you because you understand that your state, your choices, your perspective are bigger than anything happening around you. The mind is a tool, and when it's free, it becomes the sharpest tool you have. It helps you create, innovate, persevere, and lead. But when it's trapped, it becomes your worst enemy, cutting you down from the inside. That's why the work is always mental first. Before you change your business, you change your beliefs. Before you transform your health, you transform your identity. Before you step into leadership, you step into self-mastery. Freeing your mind is not an abstract concept. It's the foundation for every single result you want in your life. Ask yourself, what thoughts have been chaining you? What stories have you been repeating that keep you small? What fears have you allowed to dictate your choices? What limitations have you accepted as truth that were never true to begin with? The first step to freedom is awareness. Once you see the chains, you can break them. Once you recognize the lie, you can refuse to live by it. Once you confront the fear, you can walk through it. The moment your mind is free, the game changes. You stop seeing obstacles as stop signs and start seeing them as opportunities. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I succeed? You stop holding back, waiting for the perfect moment, and start creating the moment yourself. You stop needing guarantees and start trusting yourself to figure it out. You stop letting the past dictate the future and start writing a new story right now. Everything you want begins on the other side of a free mind. A free mind allows you to love fully without fear of loss. A free mind allows you to build boldly without fear of failure. A free mind allows you to speak authentically without fear of judgment. A free mind allows you to pursue your vision without waiting for approval. That's why nothing outside of you can hold you back once your mind is free, because all the chains were never really outside to begin with. They were inside. And the moment you unlock them, you realize you were always stronger than the obstacles, always bigger than the setbacks, always more capable than the doubts made you believe. This is the power you've been searching for. Not the power of control, but the power of liberation. Not the power to dominate others, but the power to dominate your own thoughts. Not the power to manipulate the outer world, but the power to master the inner world. Free your mind, and the rest of your life rises to meet you.